What?
Sorry, that was a phone call. That was UNICEF trying to call me.
Okay.
Try that again.
I'll try that again. Oh no, this time we watched Season 4, Episode 21, Monster A Go-Go.
But there was no monster, no go-go, no short to go with it.
But first, some follow-up.
Yes. Okay, look. Pandemic has been going on for a long time. I'm very tired. We took a whole episode off, and I'm still extremely tired. So it is my fault, though. I'm not going to let that take the blame of it. It is my fault that I have let you all down.
And how did you let our precious, in some cases, money-giving listeners down?
Oh, God. I'm sorry, especially to the Patreon listeners. You deserve accuracy more than everyone. Well, shortly after we put out the last episode, I got a very kind note from listener Ned over at the Tolkien podcast on Megaphonic by the Bywater, who pointed out that there were 3 little errors, cavils, things we should have said better, and he was completely right. He was very polite about it, though. I didn't mind getting the letter because he was very polite about it, but I did feel bad for letting you all down. So Ned pointed out that, first off, Chick Chandler, who we talked about, was in another MST3K movie, and we didn't even mention it. And you know how we love to mention these things. He was in Lost Continent.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
No, we haven't done an episode on Lost Continent yet, even though I think of it as exactly the same movie as King Dinosaur. But he's in that. He's the co-pilot with Cesar Romero. So when we get to Lost Continent someday, we'll talk about him again. I said that the Challenger explosion was in 1985. It was 1986. Yes. I know this like the back of my hand. I was there. I mean, I wasn't on the Challenger.
No, otherwise I'd have a lot of questions.
But I was in grade school. I remember it happening. I know that factoid. I'm just tired. And finally, that my description of that early Monty Python episode was a bit off. The blancmanges in that lovely episode don't eat the tennis players. They turn everyone in England Scottish because Scottish people are bad at tennis. I mean, this is no longer true, thanks to Andy Murray. But at the time, that was very funny and not at all racially insensitive. Oh, wait.
So with the Challenger bit, I thought I had misheard it. So I didn't pay it another mind. I was like, that can't be right. Godzilla 1985 comes out in 1985. The Challenger is a whole other year. But with the Monty Python thing, I had actually, it's funny, when the majority of the Monty Python catalog arrived on Netflix, and I believe they even have the German episodes. That's how far it goes. I actually sought out that episode because the blancmange playing tennis was one of my favorite Monty Python sketches, and I had been yearning to revisit it. So I looked it up, which episode that is, and specifically watched it. So I've watched it fairly recently, and nonetheless, when you guys were going over your descriptions, again, sounding so authoritative, I had questions, but the podcast successfully gaslit me into thinking otherwise.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I try not to do that. I know I can sometimes sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I get things wrong. All sorts of trustworthy sources get things wrong sometimes. You have to have a critical eye, even when you listen to podcasts, I guess especially. Like, I certainly knew that there was a whole Scottish element to that episode, because one of my favorite random Monty Python lines is, Agnes Podgorny, what do you mean? Which makes no sense out of context, which is fantastic as well. But yeah, oh well. Oh, well, I apologize again, everyone. I'll try better next time. And also, if you ever do hear something wrong, feel free to write in. Just, be nice about it. Everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. I love learning new things. And that's one way to do it. So thank you, Ned, for telling me about this. And again, my apologies. Is there any other follow-up so that we can stop thinking about my shame?
Well, we have much sadder news, as we must bid a fond farewell to one John Bud Cardos.
Oh, dear. John Bud Cardos, person who gave us such films as Outlaw of Gore And what was that other one, that season 12 episode he did?
It was the something that time forgot.
The Day Time Ended.
There we go, close enough. And he also directed the William Shatner movie Kingdom of the Spiders, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah, I had to pour a cold one out and say, this Bud's for you, to say goodbye to poor Bud Cardos, because he was an interesting fella. And in the interview on the Shout Factory DVD for Outlaw of Gore, he is very candid about Outlaw of Gore.
Oh, dear. I think there's a lot to be candid about in the making of that film.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Kingdom of Spiders? Kingdom of the Spiders, sorry.
I saw it on TV once, and notably, rather than the William Shatner performance capturing my attention, it has a weird thing. The entire score is lifted from cues from The Twilight Zone, specifically by Jerry Goldsmith, for an episode called The Invaders. So it has this like first-class score that's inexplicably in it, sort of like how SCTV used to steal Twilight Zone cues for their sketches.
I mean, if you've got access to it, you might as well use it.
Yeah, man, Jerry Goldsmith don't come cheap, especially now that he's dead.
We got a nice letter in the emails.
Ooh, I love letters.
I know, this is a very nice one. We got a letter from listener Chad from Seattle. Hadn't heard from him in a while. He says some nice things about our last episode and notes in particular that it's interesting to compare the Jetson-inspired short, which is Once Upon a Honeymoon, you know, the phone thing from last time, to today's marketing equivalent. Rather than fixating on futuristic gadgets that promise a brighter plastic future, we often see exposed brick, wood handles, and Edison light bulbs that evoke a rustic, analog past. Vinyl record players are more prominently displayed in ads produced in 2021 than they are in ads produced in 1961. Whether it's promoting a better future or evoking a simpler past, marketing always wants you to think about any time other than right now, even though being present for the current moment is essential to authentic happiness.
Wow, it's a real Jetsons meets the Flintstones kind of feeling.
All this from a movie discussion of a film with 5 cast members, 3 of whom are named Steve. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Chad. That's a really good point to think about, is this idea of ads are always about another time. Mm-hmm. Ads want you to change, right? Something is wrong currently, and they're going to sell you the solution to it. So it's always got to be about some time other than now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the most successful ad that I can recall is a Canadian ad campaign for Shoppers Drug Mart, in which B. Arthur urges you to come to Shoppers Drug Mart. And that always made me think of another time, prime time, because the Golden Girls was still on.
Okay. I don't know what to say about that. I never saw that ad. So,
oh man, they were great. There was a number of ads with B. Arthur, and it made Canada seem so ritzy that we could afford B. Arthur.
That is very fancy. I don't remember B. Arthur in any ads, but I'm sure I can be proven wrong once again. Please write in if you know of other ads that aired in America that starred B. Arthur.
We'll link in the show notes to Shoppers Drug Mart ads, because I know someone uploaded them on YouTube, probably the Retro Ontario Network, who are doing God's work.
All right. Well, I think we need to get along to today's episode, Monster A Go-Go, and it's short, skating on, what's it called? Circus on Ice. So this time we watched Season 4, Episode 21, Monster A Go-Go.
But first, a short Circus on Ice. All right, we've got skating and a lot more skating. There's not much to report about this short, what with its skating and goofy costumes and all. It may not be much, but it is a part of our heritage. Yes, this short is Canadian, which means it's a lot like the American circus, except it's cheaper and more boring. Oh, and it's on ice.
And now, our feature presentation. Nothing happens in this movie, which is so badly filmed you can barely see the nothing happening. I guess I should be more specific. Once again, the first astronaut has gone up into space, and there has been some monkeying around with a medication he was given to keep him safe from deadly space radiation. And so, when his capsule lands back on Earth, our astronaut has mutated into a hideous monster who, of course, goes on a killing spree. He's caught and he's imprisoned in a lab at one point, but he's under the care of the same guy who monkeyed around with his medication in the first place. And look, he's just not that good at his job, okay? He's not a scientist. So the monster escapes off screen. A lot of this movie takes place off screen, but at least we've got a narrator trying to help, promising us scenes of horror, which the film never quite delivers. Anyway, by the end of the film, the military is cornering the monster in the sewers of Chicago, a blatant homage to The Third Man, but then the film ends. The narrator informs us that, off screen, the monster turns out not to be in Chicago at all. The astronaut has been found 8,000 miles away in a lifeboat, with no memory of how he got there. Now, you might think this would raise the stakes and start the real movie, to explain what just happened and what killed all those people, all that sort of thing. But nah, the movie just comes to an abrupt, if merciful, stop. The end.
Meanwhile, on the Satellite of Love, we open with Tom and Crow marveling over a giant vat. Joel, confused by the vat and its rancid smell, asks the boys what the Sam Hill is going on around there. Turns out Tom and Crow have made a micro-cheesery, which is sure to boost the economy. America needs cheese, damn it. After the break, Joel's a little miffed that the bots had used his sneakers to stir the cheese, permanently ruining them. For the invention exchange, the Mads offer Joel a deal. If Team Joel wins the invention exchange, they'll all watch Local Hero. If Team Deep 13 wins, the punishment shall be Monster a Go-Go served with the short Circus on Ice. Joel decides that Frank, acting as impartial judge, is a square fellow and thus will give them a fair hearing. The bots remain unconvinced. Onward! Toys are the theme of this week's exchange, with the Mads presenting Johnny Longtorso, an action figure whose every part is sold separately. Evil!
Evil! You are evil!
Calm down, honey, it's okay.
The bots present something more wholesome as Tom shows off his Action Oxford figure, and Gypsy gives us an action figure based on Trek sensation Wilma Rudolph. Crow gives us a typically Crow offering, the Woodscrew tapeworm who lives in the host body of the action figure. Despite their efforts, Frank declares Team Evil has won the day, so it's Monster a Go-Go for all. In segment 2, Gypsy doesn't get Crow. Crow lists off his various quirks to an uncertain Gypsy, who later realizes it's Tom she doesn't get. There's very little to this sketch, and it's all the funnier for it. Things get rough for Crow in segment 3, as Joel and Tom refuse to play ball with him, tormenting him relentlessly. It's all in good fun, and Joel gives Crow a Snickers in the theater for being such a sport. Segment 4 sees Tom and Crow after all their chores are complete, so Joel gives the bots free rein with what to do with their time. Given their curious robot minds, Joel decides to do an impromptu AMA about the universe. The bots choose specifically to ask about Rupert Holmes's Pina Colada song. Seriously, what is its deal? Also, I thought that song was written by John Holmes, but that's a long story. In fact, I think every story about John Holmes is a long story, if you know what I mean. Things are bleak for the bots after the movie. To cheer them up, Joel gives Tom a crown and declares him a happy king, and dubs Crow Sir Giggles Von Laughs-A-Lot, complete with Crow Jester Stick. But the bots are too upset. That is until Tom and Crow are able to name good things about the movie. Dr. F chastises them for being losers dressed for a Ren fair, but Frank spoils things when he reveals the evening plans of the Deep 13 crew may or may not involve a Matlock marathon. The end. Monster a Go-Go.
It's no Local Hero. Actually, I've never heard of Local Hero outside of this thing. Have you seen Local Hero?
I thought Hero was that movie. See, I was confusing it with Hero, which is that movie about the plane crash, but not about the Brazilian soccer team. Yeah, I have no idea what Local Hero is about. They say it's good in the episode, so maybe.
I've got its wiki page up now. Local Hero is a 1983 Scottish comedy drama film written and directed by Bill Forsyth and starring Peter Riegert, Dennis Lawson, Fulton Mackey, and Burt Lancaster. I know who he is. And it seems to have been very well received. It's one of those quiet little films that Roger Ebert got very excited about. Well, anyway, I haven't seen that, but now I've seen Monster Go-Go one more time.
Yay! Finally, did it live up to expectation? Did it fulfill your every wish? Monster a Go-Go.
Well, here's the thing. So this episode, I remember watching it when it first aired. The very first time it aired, and I remember getting so angry about the end of the film, about the "there is no monster" bit, that I just despised the film. And even Manos coming out a few episodes later wasn't enough to make me convinced that this was the worst movie they had ever done. Red Zone Cuba, a few seasons later, gave it a run for its money.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means that I kind of avoided this episode a bit. I feel like I watched the short a few times in other compilations, and I definitely remember the sketches, but the movie itself and its riffing, I didn't remember at all, which meant that I had a fantastic treat in store for me. Because if you can get over the fact that this is a horrible movie that's miserable to watch and makes you very angry, this is a fantastic episode.
Yes, this is in the top 20, if not top 10 for me. I love this episode. I have a very special fondness for like the movies that create this weird kind of time suck where you have no idea if you've been watching the episode for 3 minutes or 3 days. This is one of the funniest takes on a truly awful movie. This goes beyond cheesy. This is just terrible. And some of my favorite bits are here, like the "Hi, Steve," or when they're even at the opening credits, they know that the movie reeks of incompetence, or their reaction to the capsule, where it's like, "Oh, he was 3 feet tall and he stood the whole way." And best of all, like the funniest part of the episode isn't even a joke. It's just Joel's reaction to when the Foley guy does the for the phone.
Yep.
And he just says, "Unbelievable." Like I was like, I know that when I first saw that I was in tears, but like I was unprepared for it because I forgot where it happened. And again, I was in tears.
I had that same thing where I knew it was coming, but I didn't know where it was coming. And it was just, it landed so well. Oh, so much good stuff in this one. I also want to say, like, the short is also fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Like so many of the shorts around this era, it gets what they call real dark. And yet there's such a wide variety of jokes and so many of my favorite little moments.
Yes, and this short has one of my favorite bits of all time, a goat, which is Tom's song about the pink ladies being nightmares.
Oh, yes, that he really delivers on that one. It just keeps going. Oh, there's so much good stuff in this. And
the sketches.
The sketches. Again, I hadn't seen this episode as an entire episode in a long time. So I didn't realize that one of my favorite sketches is in it, which is the "I don't get you" sketch. Which, as you say, there's not much to it. In a way, it's all kind of build up for Tom's line at the end.
Yeah.
Which is such a brilliant line to have this sort of awkward conversation between Gypsy and Crow. And "I don't get you. Is it this? Is it that?" Like, it's cute. It's not super funny, but it's cute. And then finally, Gypsy's like, "Oh, it must have been, oh, it's Tom. It's Tom I don't get." And so she goes over to Tom. "Tom, I don't get you." And he's just like, "Nobody does. I'm the wind, baby." And speeds on out of there. It's like, oh, yes. Yes, this captured all three of those characters so well.
Yeah, there's a nice bit of Gypsy in this episode, which always makes for a good episode.
Yes. Shame that the movie is so terrible.
Yes, but it's remarkably terrible. Like, this is an unforgettable experience. And that ending is so bad that it's amazing. Chris, that ending makes me so proud of every ending to anything I've ever written. And I wrote a short story in which a homeless man evades a vampire by pushing him off a building, and the vampire lands into an open truck full of garlic.
Sure. But at least the vampire was still there.
Yes. It's not like suddenly it was his imagination. And in fact, Count Vladistok was alive and well. It never got to that.
It's such a bad twist. It's such a bad twist that they don't even explore. It's just like, we have decided to stop filming, therefore let's just pretend that nothing ever happened and we can call it a night.
Yes, it's such an audaciously bad twist that I kind of love it. Like, and there's never been anything like it. Has there ever been a movie about a monster where suddenly there is no monster?
I mean, sometimes it turns out that we were the monster the whole time.
Whoa.
But that's just like one layer of awfulness in this movie. I also want to ask you know more about the making of movies than I do. You've even been going to school for such things.
Sure.
Why is all the dialogue so echoey?
I believe that's because, and you can tell this in a few cases where somebody is sitting down and somebody is standing up and they're far away from each other, is that clearly they had the boom mic raised up real high so that it's out of frame, which is good. You want to have your boom mic in the safe zone, but if you have like more than one character, one, you either have to have like a really trusty operator who can get both of them, or perhaps two booms even. And but I think they had it like way up high in these empty spaces because the film was shot, believe it or not, the film was shot on location. Like many of the laboratories and stuff that are in were like legit laboratories, even though they look like sets.
They sure do. But it also happens when they're outside.
Yes, and that would be again that I think that the boom mic is raised way too high. And they're getting everything.
I guess you can't really make echoes outside, but maybe. I mean, I guess so. It's possible. It just seemed really echoey for those situations. Also, the film is incredibly dark. You can't make anything out in much of the film.
No, and having seen a remastered copy of Monster A Go-Go, that's true for all versions of Monster A Go-Go.
Yep, this is just what the film looks like.
No, this is not the case where we marvel over clips of the Sadko movie. No, the Sadko's the Sinbad movie. The other one with the Sampo.
Sampo, yeah.
Yes. This isn't where we marvel over the remastered clips of Sampo.
No. Oh boy, it's so awful. It's so terrible.
Yeah, and perfect for this show because, again, like, who would have ever heard of such a film? Suddenly there was no film if it weren't for Mystery Science Theater 3000. So how did this movie get made?
That is a great question, and one I'm hoping you have an answer for.
Yes. So, what do you think of the title Monster A Go-Go before we start?
Oh, it's a great title.
Yeah, it's a fantastic title. And sure enough, that fantastic title has nothing to do with the film's original director, Bill Rebane.
Okay.
Yes, Bill Rebane had the idea that he would make a film shot in Illinois called Terror at Half Day, which is a terrible title.
Terror at what? Terror at Half Day?
Half Day.
Like noon?
Well, there's a Half Day Illinois.
What?
Apparently there's a Half Day Illinois.
Half Day. Oh my God, there is.
Yeah.
Half Day Illinois. That's really okay. All right, fine. I'm sure it's lovely.
So the 22-year-old Rebane decides to make a movie. He'd been involved in promotional films and whatnot. He decides now's the time to make a feature-length movie. He's even in the film. Remember that incredibly draggy scene that you'd swear was padding, but the actors show up in scenes with the regulars, so it's clearly not like added on later, where there's 40-year-old teens a-groovin', and one guy pushes a skinny guy away from his goyle, and they go back to the car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the aggressive guy is the director.
Oh,
yeah.
Good for him to take on that role.
Fancied himself the next tab hunter. But so they the story goes they raised $50,000, and apparently most of that money disappeared with a week of union shooting.
Sure.
And at least that's what Rebane claims. He blames the union crew for all the movie's problems.
Oh, great. Sounds like a real gem of a guy.
Oh, you bet. There's nothing I love more than anti-union sentiment. So the rest of the film was shot with a non-union crew in 1962. But they only finish about 90% of the movie. And the film only comes to light when we enter a much better man. A king of a man by the name of H.G. Lewis, who has the brilliant title Monster A Go-Go.
Now, H.G. Lewis is the guy who wrote The Time Machine?
He would write The Time Machine if it had more dismemberment in it.
Oh, no, wait. H.G. Lewis is the Narnia guy. Never mind.
There we go. H.G. Lewis was in the advertising business, and he was in Illinois at the time, and he had an advertising filmmaking company called Mid-Continental Productions, and he was looking for something to go as a double feature for a movie he made. I believe it's called Moonshine Madness or something along those lines. He just needed a double feature, and he found out about this almost done movie. And so how do you finish a movie when there's no when you don't want to spend any more money to finish filming and there's just no ending.
Well, I think we all know where this is going.
Yep. You narrate the movie.
Really?
That is the cheapest solution. Now, H.G. Lewis is often credited as the narrator, but personally, it does not sound like his voice, because he has kind of a squeaky voice, an adorably squeaky kind of voice, a David Lynchian kind of thing, and the narrator sounds nothing like that.
It's Moonshine Mountain, by the way.
Moonshine Mountain, yeah. At the mountains of Moonshine Madness was H.P. Lovecraft's Moonshine story.
There you go.
That was his forerunner to the Dukes of Hazzard. But anyway, let's talk H.G. Lewis, because he's a super interesting guy.
All right. Tell me about H.G. Lewis, Ad Man, and cheap film. Did he wreck the film or save the film? I'm not sure.
In my opinion, by adding the ludicrous twist and coming up with the title Monster a Go-Go and getting like that fun 50s rock sounding opening credits, I think he saved the movie.
He certainly made it memorable.
Yeah. He made it better because, okay, what's better in terms of the movie? The twist and the opening credits or everything else?
Circus on Ice?
Well, there you go. That's an answer. I'm sorry that you bet all the money on that
one. Local hero, probably.
But H.G. Lewis. So H.G. Lewis was originally an English teacher, and then he got involved in advertising. He was, like I said, involved in Mid-Continental Productions over in Chicago and did some early features there. He teams up with a fella named Dave Friedman, a film distributor, and they move out to Hollywood. No, sorry, not Hollywood. There's a typo there. I meant to say Florida.
Florida? Hollywood, Florida?
They go out to Florida. So yeah, they get originally, like while they were in Chicago, HG made some attempts at real movies. Like he made a film called Living Venus, which is the story of a guy in the nude picture business, which happens to feature in one of the big parts a young Harvey Korman.
Oh,
yeah,
huh.
And of course, they realize that, you know, what's really selling these movies is the playing around the lack of a true censorship board in the 60s.
Right.
Because it all comes down to local censorship at that point. The MPAA is not in existence yet. So, you know, they leave it there to whatever the local censors want. You know, they cut up the movie appropriately, but that's out of their hands. And they shoot what they want. And then they decided to follow up. It was like, oh, the nudity is selling these movies. Let's make nudie cutie movies. And one of which they made has the amazing title, The Adventures of Lucky Pierre.
Oh, my.
Yeah. I don't know what a Lucky Pierre is, but I don't want to have one. H.G. Lewis basically describes his early career as grinding out nudie cuties like so much hamburger, one of which has the amazing title, Boing, as in 3 N's, and another of which is called Goldilocks and the 3 Bears.
As in bare naked.
Yes.
Right.
But Florida is where H.G. Lewis is going to make his mark, because he decides, you know what? People are looking for something outrageous, and horror movies are doing well. Why don't we make the most outrageous horror movie possible?
Monster a Go-Go.
And, well, this is pre-Monster a Go-Go. So they're inspired by the Suez Motel in Florida, which just so happens to have a concrete sphinx. And they cook up a story about an Egyptian caterer named Fuad Ramses.
What?
Yes. Yes. Who collects body parts from young women in order to bring Ishtar back to life, not affecting the box office returns of the hit movie Ishtar.
Right.
And the film is so disgusting that barf bags are printed up with, "You may need this if you see Blood Feast."
That's a good gimmick.
Yes.
I like that.
John Waters considers the film to be a classic.
Of course. This guy sounds very John Waters friendly.
Oh, most certainly. And you know what? He is watching him in interviews. There's a terrific documentary on him that's called The Godfather of Gore, because sure enough, when you have a hit like Blood Feast, as Blood Feast was, you follow that up with more gore movies. And the documentary called Godfather of Gore was the longest interviews I've ever seen with the man. And he's basically he's William Castle if he were all charm and no talent.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to have one of those things, at least have the charm.
Yeah, probably.
He made a lot of strange movies. He made 2000 Maniacs, which of course John Waters would pay homage to later on in his career.
With multiple Maniacs.
Exactly. And
there's also the 10,000 Maniacs.
So we get to 2000 Maniacs, which is almost as big a hit as Blood Feast. He comments to say, of all the movies that I have excreted, 2000 Maniacs is my personal favorite. He continues to make movies, some of which are strange, some of which are like I said, he makes a hillbilly movie about moonshine. He makes a movie called The Blast Off Girls, which has a role for Colonel Harlan Sanders in it.
What?
Yes, Colonel Sanders is in an H.G. Lewis movie.
Okay.
Yes. So, other films of note from the great H.G. Lewis. The Wizard of Gore.
Yum.
The Gore Girls.
This is all about Al Gore, huh?
Blood Feast 2, All You Can Eat.
Okay.
And my personal favorite title, Just for the Hell of It.
Oh, that's a fun title.
And of course, so as I mentioned, he got involved in advertising, and kind of after his heyday had ended in the early to mid 70s, he went back into advertising. He had like another renaissance where he went to do some direct-to-video films, but no one speaks of those, including the aforementioned Blood Feast 2, the belated sequel. Nobody speaks of those, so I can't really comment on them other than to say they're probably worse than the originals, the original run of movies that he had. But he was an ad man. He penned like books on advertising, and when I was working in marketing, I tried to get my hands on some of these, and I couldn't because they were out of print at the time
and covered in blood.
They have totally generic titles like On the Art of Writing Copy and stuff like that. The Advertising Age Handbook of Advertising from the Department of Redundancy Department.
Right. I mean, it sounds like he got into like nudie horror exploitation films because they were good sellers, not because this was his inner drive, right? No, although he certainly seems to be proud of 2000 Maniacs. And I will say this, I think it's just for the hell of it. There's one movie of his that opens with a song written and performed by H.G. Lewis, and in the opening sequence, a lady takes her baby out of a carriage and puts it in a dumpster. Oh, wow. And it's not a dummy or anything. She really does it. Oh, no. And it's super funny. Just like Neil Young warned us. But I will say this, because, like, really, you hit the nail on the head. He is an ad man through and through. That's what he's good at. That's why the best parts of his oeuvre are the trailers, which often featured scenes created specifically for the trailer to lure people in. Oh, it's like a video game. Oh, yes. And there's some great ad copy. I have two of my favorites here. All right. This is Adam, and this is the story of Adam and evil. Now that sounds like it's going to be a motto for you. I want that on my gravestone. And lastly, not for the eyes and ears of anyone under 16 years. Oh, very good. Very catchy rhyme. Yeah. So H.G. Lewis, terrible filmmaker, interesting guy, super fun interview. I would totally recommend, if you have a strong stomach for fleeting scenes of gore, to watch The Godfather of Gore, because it still features scenes from his movies. It's time. It's part of our heritage time. We need to learn more about the Toronto Skating Club. Well, there's a skating club in Toronto, and in the 30s, it was a big deal. Started up in 1902, and by the 30s, it was a big deal. I don't know what more to tell you. It existed, and it was kind of a big deal. Oh, man. It's weird to think of Canada having any kind of big deal outside of the littlest hobo. Yeah, no, all sorts of people showed up there. It had a big influence on skating clubs, blah, 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 blah. And I guess they put on a holiday show, and then they filmed it one year. And that's the story of this short. Yes. Now, was this ever famous enough to make any other media appearances that you know of? That I know of? No.
Oh, man.
Do you know of one?
No, I was really hoping that would jog my memory. But so far, because there's no great thriller set in a circus on ice, even though it's crying to be made.
If only Donald Pleasance had known ice skating, they might have made Circus of Horrors into Circus of Horrors on ice.
Ooh. See, that's the kind of revival I want to see, because that's just it. There's always the promise, that, or at least it was a tired running gag by the time I was a little kid, of like something crappy being done on ice.
I will say, my understanding, limited as it is from basically this one article that we have a link to, is that this Toronto skating carnival led to ice follies, ice capades, ice skating shows becoming more of a big thing. And so it may have actually indirectly led to Sesame Street on Ice or He-Man on Ice.
Whoa.
Which I saw as a kid.
Oh, wow, you did?
Yeah, I saw He-Man on Ice. You think I was going to miss that?
Was Skeletor appropriately femme?
Yeah, I think they had the actual voice actors do the voices. I don't remember.
Oh, nice.
I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Well, regardless, it sounds like whoever did it could do an appropriate meh.
Yeah. No, you gotta. So you've never seen anything on ice?
I've never seen anything on ice, and I'd be very curious about He-Man on ice.
I mean, that's probably your best bet. I'm pretty sure I saw it, but I can't. Hold on. Let me just. Masters of the Universe on Ice. I mean, I'm pretty sure this happened, but I can't find any internet confirmation of it. I really think I saw this, though.
It sounds 80s enough to be true.
Exactly, right? Anyway, let's assume I did. Listeners, if you also remember Masters of the Universe on Ice, please write in so I know I'm not just whole cloth inventing memories.
Now, the only things that I know of on ice were, of course, the hockey games, and I was not that into hockey for anything other than who had the best mascot, which, of course, was the Pittsburgh Penguins, because it had a penguin playing hockey.
Now, you didn't like the inherent gore of hockey?
No. Because I don't like the real stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Is there like a Harlem Globetrotters of hockey where they just do extra gore everywhere?
I think that's just called Canadian hockey.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 tiny tidbits about this episode, Monster A-Go-Go. A-Go-Go, Adam, a-go!
At one point, Joel predicts that no one involved in this movie would ever do anything else in film. Well, that's not quite true. Wait a few years, Joel, and you'll see another Bill Rebane film, for he also directed Season 8's The Giant Spider Invasion. Oh, and that film also has Stu Taylor in it. You know, the truck driver, helps the woman who ran out of gas. Yeah, that guy.
This film was the last role for June Travis, seen here as Ruth. I don't remember who she is. But believe it or not, she had a decent career in supporting roles between 1952's The Star and this movie. Travis co-starred along with such greats as Bette Davis and James Cagney in her heyday, and good for her.
According to the IMDb, Philip Morton, who stars as Colonel Steve, became writer Phil Morton, who most famously wrote for the Dick Ebersol years of Saturday Night Live. Yeah, you know, the Eddie Murphy, Joe Piscopo, we don't know what to do with Julia Louis-Dreyfus years. Weird if true, which of course it isn't, because that Phil Morton isn't nearly old enough to have been in Monster A-Go-Go, and also he looks nothing like good old Colonel Steve. In short, don't trust everything you see on the IMDb, kids.
And speaking of weird credits, actor Lois Brooks, seen here as somebody, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, she's got one other credit to her name, appearing as herself in the Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy episode of You Bet Your Life in 1954. Unless, of course, that's a different Brooks. Look, there's only so many mysteries we're willing to solve here.
You know, there's no real mention of the movie in this week's host segments. Paul Chaplin writes in the Amazing Colossal Episode Guide, I recall this episode as being the first time we decided explicitly to write sketches having nothing to do with the movie. Really, we had no choice. We ran through a long string of topics trying to find one that had something to do with the movie, but since the movie's about nothing, any topic that is about something, that is, any topic that exhibits topicness, cannot, by definition, have anything to do with this movie. Understand? Interesting philosophical dilemma. I think we solved it nicely.
Of the film's oft misquoted final line, Chaplin continues, along with Play It Again, Sam, there was no monster has entered common parlance. Just to help you win a few bar bets, here's the actual line. Suddenly, there was no trail, there was no giant, no monster, no thing called Douglas to be followed. There was nothing in the tunnel but the puzzled men of courage who suddenly found themselves alone with shadows and darkness.
When the narrator informs us that
observers reported that a strange object had fallen to Earth.
Crow blurts out,
"A Coke bottle."
this is a reference to The Gods Must Be Crazy, a 1980 South African comedy about a tribe in the Kalahari Desert whose lives get flipped turned upside down when a Coke bottle descends from the heavens unshattered.
In one of those scenes where the characters are just sort of staring at whatever out in a field, we get this exchange.
What do you make of this, Carl?
Looks like a meadow muffin.
A meadow muffin is cow flop, or maybe bison flop, or horse flop. It's flop, okay? Don't step in it.
During another aimless scene in the woods, Crow screams,
"Coal Shack, you out there?"
a reference to the short-lived but wonderful series consisting of 20 episodes and 2 telemovies, Kolchak, the Night Stalker, starring the wonderful character actor Darren McGavin. McGavin will be well known to diehard Misties for his role in Hangar 18, riffed as the 19th episode of the KTMA era. But that's not the only KTMA reference in this Shallow 13. We've also discussed the Kolchak series' incredible theme music in our episode on The Last Chase.
Oh, hey, have we talked enough about the music in this film? At one point, Joel responds to the plonking, tuneless soundtrack by saying,
He's sneaking past Robert Fripp's room.
Robert Fripp was behind the prog rock band King Crimson, and he's done a lot of experimental music over the years, but maybe nothing quite so, experimental as this film's score.
If you're out there looking for the original soundtrack to Monster A Go-Go, we've got some bad news. Its guitar twangs and piano thonks were never officially released as a soundtrack, hence no scorner this episode. But Monster A Go-Go would double as the title for the 4th album by the garage band The Fuzztones.
In terms of more familiar forms of music, though, we get a reprise of Joel singing Wipeout, which he also did in the KTMA episode for Phase 4. We go off on a tangent with that in a bonus bit that you can hear in our recent bonus bit compilation episode.
And during the A-Go-Go portion of the film with dancing overage teens, Joel and the Bots sing,
Rock, 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 rock and roll high school.
referring to the song and film of the same name. The film concerns a girl played by PJ Soles who desperately wants the Ramones to perform at her school. It's a lovable, goofy comedy buoyed by an unbeatably charismatic performance from Soles and a rockin' soundtrack featuring Devo and, you guessed it, the Ramones, the latter of whom wrote and performed the aforementioned title song. Currently, the film is streaming for free on Shout Factory's website. Link in the show notes.
And that's time.
Now, Chris, I don't think there was a better time for all toy-loving boils and ghouls than the 80s.
I mean, they had a plentiful supply of toys.
So much spin-off merch.
There was a lot of spin-off merch, that's true.
And they were cool. They were action figures and vehicles, not like crappy old Funko Pops, which appeal to no one.
I do admit I don't understand the appeal of Funko Pops. They are toys that you're very specifically meant to not play with.
Ugh.
But yeah, no, I mean, there were tons of toys and there were TV shows that were all about toys. And those are the TV shows we loved and watched and went to see ice shows of, such as He-Man or, Transformers was another big one. And,
I'm sure that was on ice.
God, I would have loved to have seen Transformers on ice. Oh, well, I mean, maybe they tried it. I don't know. But, you're a little younger than me. I'm sure the shows that went into the early 90s still had all their playsets and toys.
Oh my God, yes. I was lucky in that the very first toys that I got were late 80s hits for shows that I watched, as I had real Ghostbusters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toys. So I had the Ecto-1, but most importantly, I had the first line of figures, which were just like the straight Ghostbusters with their proton packs and like a little neon stream, which was pretty cool. And they were all different colors, and that was super nice. But I also got the second wave of figures in which if you squeezed the arm of the figure, like if you pressed it in towards the figure's chest, their eyes would bug out, their hair would pop off, and all that sort of stuff.
That's always fun. Now, wait, the real Ghostbusters, there were only like 6 characters on that show.
Well, yeah, you've got the 4 main Ghostbusters, and you've got Janine, so you've got tons of people to squeeze arms of.
and then the car. But like, that's not enough. You need thousands of Transformers. Like Pokemon got this right. You want to have as many as possible.
That is true. And in fact, like it was quite a plethora of stuff, because even though Slimer was sold separately, and in fact was for some reason inexplicably larger than all the real Ghostbusters, each Ghostbuster came with a little ghost, which is like the total opposite of Johnny Longtorso. It is is a deal to get these Kenner real Ghostbusters figures. I mean, figures these days, if you got a Ghostbusters figure now, it would just be, it's like, well, you got yourself a Winston. It comes with nothing.
Yeah, that I think is the real brilliant thing about the Johnny Longtorso invention of the Mads, is that, you don't need a zillion characters. You just need one character with a zillion parts. And I guess this is also the Barbie methodology, right? Where you buy the Barbie doll and then you have to buy all the outfits. But obviously it's different because you do want arms on your, well, maybe you do. I don't know.
I don't know.
Johnny Longtorso, I don't know.
Most Barbies I've seen eventually had their parts ripped off like an H.G. Lewis film.
And I guess that's the whole Mr. Potato Head issue as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Is, in fact, Johnny Longtorso just a Mr. Potato Head?
Yes, but it's like, again, all pieces sold separately because, again, it's an evil cause, a brilliantly evil cause all the same. But it's like, you know what? As we got into the 90s, I started to see things change, because I also had the incredible Crash Dummies toys.
Uh-huh. The people? Yeah.
Sadly, no, because it would be very, very fun to put them in a car and crash them into a wall.
No, I remember the Incredible Crash Test Dummies, whatever they were called. I remember the ads, and then they turned into a toy.
Yeah, I bought the toys, and I think I specifically got the toys less because the toy was fun, and more because one of the Crash Dummies was voiced by the inimitable Lorenzo Music.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right anyways.
That is correct. I knows my Lorenzo Music.
You sure do.
But, with the Incredible Crash Dummies, each thing was sold separately. So you got a Crash Dummy, you got no car. You did not even get the wall that the dummy is supposed to crash into.
Do you need a car for a Crash Test Dummy? You can just throw it at your own wall.
I mean, I did do that until I got the car, because the car came with an airbag that would activate the little thing that would cause the dummy to fall apart.
All right, that's good. That's worth it.
It was pretty fun smashing that into things. But did you have any particularly ludicrous toys?
I don't know if we had any ludicrous toys. We had some of the things that people got excited about because, we had some Transformers and He-Man were big in our house. And we had like Castle Grayskull and Skeletor Mountain, whatever the heck that's called. What is Skeletor's lair called? I forget now.
Oh, God. I forget. It's not Mount Doom. That's a Conan the Barbarian thing.
It is Snake Mountain. Snake Mountain. We had the Snake Mountain. That was a lot of fun. And I don't know if we had any of the particularly ludicrous Transformers back in the day. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like none of them went that wild. Did you have something particularly loopy?
Well, the one that I noticed that I never got, but was always for sale because there was always a Spider-Man cartoon on, whether it was reruns of the 60s series or the 80s series or the 90s series or the other 90s series, there was always a Spider-Man cartoon. And inevitably, Spider-Man would be marketed with a spider car.
Oh, yes.
Which sort of defeats the purpose of Spider-Man, because you want to be out there swinging your webs.
Yeah, and also he's in high school. Can he even drive yet?
Depends on the Spider-Man. We might get the college-age Peter Parker or the middle-aged one who's working strictly for the Daily Bugle.
Stupid Spider-Verse.
There's an appeal to the Spider-Verse. One of the Spider-Mans voiced by Nicolas Cage. It's got all sorts of possibilities.
Nicolas Cage is no Lorenzo Music.
That's true. If we had a Spider-Man voiced by Lorenzo Music, that would be a thing. But you do have a Spider-Ham voiced by John Mulaney.
All right. That's good. I'll go for that.
One of the things I found care of Gizmodo is, I think, probably the one that takes the cake, and this is apparently real. With Rocky, there were Rocky action figures, and I can believe that.
Sure.
But apparently one of the action figures for a more recent, I think, line of Rocky action figures, one of the things that was sold separately was the meat, as in the meat that Rocky punched.
Oh, wow. That's a great add-on. Yes. Oh, you know what? Now that you mention it, we did have one particularly notable He-Man figure, because we had Stinkor.
Yes, good catch.
Yeah, Stinkor, the one which had some sort of chemical sublimated into the toy itself that stank horribly. and never faded.
Oh, no.
I think stinkors still stink if you have the stinkors from back in the 80s.
Ooh,
I don't still have mine, of course. I've got a few of my Transformers, I think, from back then, but the He-Man was more my brother's stuff.
There's some great ideas for the cocaine-fueled 80s and early 90s for toys.
So I mentioned in my summary that Monster a Go-Go maybe takes a cue from the classic film, The Third Man. Because, of course, both of them notably end with groups of people chasing after the baddie in a sewer system.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to rewatch The Third Man just to get the stank of Monster a Go-Go out of my eyes. And I actually think that there's a lot more commonalities between the two. So much so that I wonder if this is a very conscious influence after all.
Well, of course, Joseph Cotton stars in both.
Yep. Yeah. No, but I mean, the films are both incredibly dark. Now, admittedly, one of them is competently filmed and is using a lot of really interesting angles. And the other one, they just couldn't afford lights.
The hell, they couldn't afford angles.
They could barely afford film. Yeah. They both have very notable, weird soundtracks.
Mm-hmm,
Again,
sure.
One of them is competently played zither music that is very evocative and interesting, and the other one is just vaguely banging on a piano or guitar or whatever. They both have big twists.
Mm-hmm.
And again, admittedly, one of them, spoiler alert, the Orson Welles character who, we know that Orson Welles is in the film. His name is in big letters, but he doesn't show up until the last third of the film.
Yeah.
And because his character was thought to be dead, he's not dead. You'll know this before it's revealed in the film. So anyway, that's a really good twist, as opposed to there was no Orson Welles. We lied to you in the title screen of this film.
Yeah, it's the opposite. It's like suddenly there is an Orson Welles, which is the twist that every movie needs.
Exactly. And then, of course, the sewer chase. Although, again, the sewers of Vienna are a lot more attractive to film in, especially if you know what you're doing when you're filming, than the sewers of Chicago. So The Third Man, very much like Monster a Go-Go, I think.
Yeah, this is, you've made a compelling case. Monster a Go-Go, very much a ripoff of The Third Man.
Yeah, you've seen The Third Man, right?
I've seen it. I own the Criterion edition, and this gave me an excuse to rewatch it when you mentioned this. And I always forget how much I love it, but I will say that, you see it once and it's an incredible, breathtaking movie.
Mm-hmm.
You see it, any repeat viewing, as compelling as the rest of the movie is, you are aching for Harry Lime to show up, because that's the best part of the movie.
Oh, see, this is actually, I had the opposite experience, because I first watched this movie when I was going through a big Orson Welles kick.
Oh.
So I was watching it specifically for the Orson Welles. And so I spent the entire movie being like, am I crazy? Isn't Orson Welles in this movie? And then he finally shows up, and he is great in it. This time I got to watch it and I was like, oh yeah, I can actually pay attention to what's going on here, and I know where this is going. So I can think about how these characters are reliable or not reliable as they try to put this together. Man, Joseph Cotton's character is awful. I don't know. It's one of those movies where I feel like I'm supposed to be rooting for the main hero, but the hero is just awful compared with almost everyone else. He's this young American who's in post-war Vienna to meet up with his friend Harry Lime and so forth, who is dead, and now he's gonna suddenly he becomes suspicious about everything, and he's gonna solve the case, and he does this in the most inept way possible.
Well, yeah, I think it's realistic for a guy with no police training too.
No police training. Yeah, he writes pulp westerns.
Yeah.
He has no police training, and yet he insists he's going to do this. He's got, brash American who refuses to learn a word of German, who will not remember how anyone's name is pronounced until somebody finally gets his name wrong, which is a great, great little moment. And then just assumes at the end of the movie, again, a bit of a spoiler, just assumes that he's going to win the girl over, that, the girlfriend of Harry Lime.
Yeah.
And thank he doesn't.
No, that's one of the best parts of the movie, is the ending itself, where she just walks away.
In the original script, they were supposed to meet cute at the end.
No.
And the director was like, no.
Yes, rightfully so.
And Graham Greene, well-known author and scriptwriter, really fought for them to have a happy ending together. And Carol Reed was like, that's not happening. This is going to be a good movie. And, eventually, with the hindsight of history, Graham Greene was like, yeah, he was right. I'm glad I lost that battle. Yeah. So anyway, it's a very good movie. Much better than Monster A Go-Go.
Now, Chris, we've talked a lot about Monster A Go-Go, perhaps even too much, but can you possibly scrape the bottom of the barrel of this bottom of the barrel movie to find one last thing to say about it, or perhaps even Circus on Ice?
Well, in fact, it's going to be about neither of those. Oh. It's going to be about one of the sketches. As you mentioned, in one of the sketches, when they have a little bit of free time to think about whatever, the bots decide that they're going to ask Joel all about the Pina Colada song by Rupert Holmes. And it's a very delightful sketch. And then it ends with them debating about another Rupert Holmes penned song.
Ah, Timothy, what have you done?
Yes. Now, I believe you know all about Timothy.
Yeah, I've seen that Todd in the Shadows.
Exactly. Timothy. There was a great Todd in the Shadows video, which we'll link to in the show notes, about Timothy, the hit song. Had you heard the song before you saw the Todd in the Shadows?
I had heard about the song, but I'd never heard it. Like, it was never played. And that's just it. It has that annoyingly catchy Timothy. So I knew if I'd ever heard it, I would have recognized it. So no,
it's pretty earwormy. So yeah, the Timothy was a single that was released by a band called The Buoys, as in like the things that you see bobbing in the ocean. The Buoys in 1970, and they put this out because it was going to get some notoriety. Let's put it that way, because the song is about a mine cave-in, people being stuck in the mine, and how the people who survived the mine cave-in ate one of the other guys in the cave. And the lyrics make this pretty damn clear. Despite one of the bots saying at the very end of it about how Timothy was a what do they say? Timothy was a pig?
No. Joel says Timothy was a duck.
That's right. Joel says Timothy was a duck, and that's not the case. You can see the Todd in the Shadows video for more details. But yes, Timothy, really catchy song, really weird topic. It did become a reasonable hit. Hit 17 in the Billboard Hot 100 and all the way up to number 9 in Canada's RPM Top Singles.
Ah, the where it counts.
If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you've ever suddenly woken up 8,000 miles away from where you were before and having no idea about how you got there or what had just happened, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by lovely listeners like you. For as little as $1 an episode, you can help us research and record this show, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or at patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up with anything we mentioned today, you'll find all our links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/89.
All right. Well, suddenly there was no episode because we have run out of things to say. Chris, what shall we be doing next time on It's Just a Show?
Well, now that the monster is gone, it's time to move on. Let's take a dip back into Season 8, which we left a bit hanging there, and deal with Episode 8, The She-Creature.
Finally, what people have been clamoring for, more It's Just a Show takes of the sci-fi era.
Yeah, but The She-Creature, I've never seen this one before, I have to admit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have, honestly. Name's not ringing a bell.
Great.
So this will be a fantastic surprise, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, it could be nothing but joy and delight. We're walking in with very few preconceived notions.
Yes, which is always fun for an episode.
But until then,
well, let us say our goodbyes on ice.
Venison, venison, venison. Take it away, Theme Squad.
Unbelievable.